Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Back to Ashes. My name is Phoenix. Thank you to the elite members of the channel. I deeply appreciate your ongoing and continuous support. With all of that being said, it is now time to go back to ashes. For once we arise from the ashes, we are a bigger, brighter, stronger, and a happier person every day. Sit back, relax, kick back, grab a snack or tuck in and get warm, and prepare for your dose of vocal melatonin entitled True Creepy Let's Not Encounters. Right after this intro, there will be an ad. I'll read the first story, there will be an ad. And after that, there will be no more ads within this video. Yesterday feels like a fever dream now. One that keeps replaying every time I close my eyes. It started as something simple, innocent even. A get-together with a few friends at a buddy's house. We ate, we laughed, and for a while, I forgot how small and suffocating my world had started to feel lately. When I left, it was just after 9 p.m., late enough for the streets to be silent, empty, and bathed in that dull orange glow that makes everything look wrong. I'd ridden my bike there earlier, figuring it'd be a nice night for a ride. But when I pulled it from the side of the house and reached for my phone, the screen was dead, completely black. I cursed under my breath. No GPS, no flashlight, just me, my bike, and the kind of darkness that clings to you like damp cloth. I started pedaling, guessing my way through unfamiliar streets. Every house looked the same crooked porch lights, the same hollowed windows staring like eyes. I told myself to keep calm, to just keep moving. About 15 minutes in, I stopped at a crosswalk to catch my breath. The air smelled wrong, wet asphalt, something metallic underneath it. That's when I noticed him. A man, standing behind a tree across the street, half hidden in the shadows, like he'd been waiting there the whole time. He was wearing a blue hoodie, hood up, face obscured. At first, I thought maybe he was just some guy waiting for a ride, but then he raised his arm and slowly waved at me. There was something wrong with that wave. Too deliberate, too slow, like he wanted me to notice every second of it. I didn't wave back, couldn't. My throat felt tight, like something was crawling up inside it. I got back on my bike and pedaled, hard. The streets ahead twisted like a maze, and every turn felt like I was going deeper into something I wasn't supposed to find. A few blocks later, I heard it. Heavy breathing, fast footsteps. Behind me. I turned and my stomach dropped. It was him. The man in the blue hoodie was running straight at me, closing the distance faster than any normal person should. I caught a glimpse of his face under the hood. Pale, gaunt, like something pulled out of a river and taught to walk again. His eyes locked on mine, wide and unblinking. I pedaled like my life depended on it, because suddenly, I knew it did. The chain screamed as I pushed harder, tires spitting gravel behind me. My lungs burned, my heart slammed against my ribs like it wanted out. But above it all, I heard his voice tear through the night, guttural and raw. "Fuck you." It wasn't angry. It was something worse. It was hungry. I cut through the intersection without looking, praying for lights, cars, anything to make this stop. But the streets were empty, dead, like the whole city had folded in on itself and left me here as prey. Up ahead, a barbecue restaurant. The neon sign was dark, but I didn't care. I slammed my bike against the door and rattled the handle. Locked. Of course it was locked. I looked back. He was still there. Not running now. Walking. Slow, like he knew I wasn't going anywhere. I jumped back on my bike and tore down the street, swerving so hard I nearly clipped a curve. My legs were screaming, my chest heaving like it would split open. When I finally reached the AutoZone near my house, I risked a glance behind me. Gone. The street stretched out, empty underneath the jaundiced glow of the lights. No footsteps, no breathing, just the hum of the lights overhead. Relief washed over me so hard my knees almost buckled. I leaned on the bike and laughed, a high, shaky sound I barely recognized as my own. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just some freak messing with me. Then I heard it. A laugh. Not mine. From the shadows near the front of AutoZone. Low at first, like someone trying to hold it in. Then louder. Jagged. Splintering into a full manic cackle that made my skin crawl. It didn't sound human. It sounded like something mimicking a man's laugh. Trying too hard. Stretching it out until it broke into pieces. The sound began to fade, growing fainter, like he was walking away. But it didn't echo like normal footsteps. It dragged, like something scraping across the pavement. I stood frozen, every instinct screaming to run, but my body refusing to obey. Finally, I bolted, made it home, locked every door, every window, sat in the dark with my back against the wall, and waited for silence to feel like safety again. But it never came, because here's the thing. When I woke up this morning, there was something on my front porch, a blue hoodie, soaked, heavy, and inside the pocket, a single note, written in jagged looping letters. Found you. "15 years ago, I flew back to the U.S. for a family reunion. It had been years since I'd seen everyone. I was living overseas at the time, and the trip was supposed to feel like a homecoming. Instead, it still wakes me up at night. My grandmother lived high in the mountains, so far out that cell service dropped off halfway up the winding roads. Her house was 100 years old, perched on a ridge where the forest pressed close to the property line. That isolation used to feel safe to me, pure. Now it feels like a warning. There wasn't room for everyone, so while I stayed with her, other relatives scrambled for accommodations. That's when he showed up. He lived just down the road, though in that wilderness that meant a 15-minute drive through trees that swallowed the horizon. He was a long-haul trucker, middle-aged, soft-spoken, offered my brother and his wife a free room for the week, said he lived alone, had space to spare, free. Something about that word lodged in my throat, but my brother thought it was generous, lucky even. We followed him to his place. From the outside, it looked perfect. A sprawling ranch house framed by black pines, the porch facing a valley that stretched for miles. I remember thinking, God, I'd rather stay here than cram into Grandma's guest room. That thought evaporated when the front door opened. The smell hit first, a wall of stench, rot laced with chemicals, something sharp like ammonia buried under cheap air freshener. It clung to my clothes, crawled up my throat until I tasted it. Inside, everything was neat. Almost too neat. Like a stage set for a life no one really lived. No clutter, no warmth, just that stench seeping from somewhere deeper. The guest room had its own sliding glass door leading to a gorgeous view. But between that room and the rest of the house was a solid wooden door, and on it were two heavy locks, a deadbolt, and a rusted padlock. I stared at them. They weren't to keep people out. They were to keep something in. My brother asked about it, forcing a laugh. What's with all the locks? The man didn't miss a beat. I've got cats. Don't want them getting out. Too many predators out here. Mountain lions, eagles. He smiled when he said it. The kind of smile that looks like a mask someone forgot to take off. I saw the cats later, 2 of them. Both lazy, neither worth locking doors over. One was even outside. The layout was strange. To use the kitchen, we had to exit their room through the sliding glass door, walk around outside, and re-enter through another door. Inside, I noticed something. The living room had another locked door leading toward the guest wing. Same double lock system. And the smell? Stronger there. That night, lying in my grandmother's quiet house, I couldn't shake the image of those locks. The way they faced inward. The way they gleamed under the hall light like restraints. My brother stayed there all week. He brushed it off later. Probably spoiled cat food. That stuff stinks when it goes bad. Maybe. But the thought rotted in the back of my mind for years. 2 years later, I flew back to visit my grandmother alone. One afternoon, he came by. Same soft voice. Same blank, polite smile. We sat in the kitchen sipping coffee. Out of nowhere, he said, "I just want to apologize for how bad the house smelled back then. It's all cleaned up now." The words slid out so casually, like he'd been rehearsing them. I froze. We hadn't mentioned the smell. Oh, I said. "No need to apologize. I didn't stay there." His face changed, tightened. "No, it wasn't good. I want you to see it now. Come over, just for a minute." I tried to laugh it off. That's okay. I believe you cleaned it up." But he leaned forward, voice dropping low. "No, you need to see it. Every room." Something in his tone made my stomach knot. My grandmother, sweet and oblivious, urged me to go. So I went. The house looked different, spotless, no smell. The locks were gone, but the air felt wrong, thick with a silence that pressed against my skin. He followed me from room to room, too close, too eager, praising me in a syrupy voice. "You've grown so beautiful, so graceful." I kept thinking about those locks, about what they were holding back. When I left, I felt like I'd escaped something that still had its eyes on me. Before that visit, there'd been an incident. My niece, 8 years old, was outside playing when she wandered over, started telling her about his private gym, about his stationary bike. "You can ride it as much as you want," he said, over and over like a lure. When I stepped in, he grinned, said he could adjust it for her size. I told him I wanted to see a bike that could adjust like that. His smile faltered, said his house was too messy, but the second I turned my back, he asked her again. That was when the dread settled into my bones. My grandmother passed years later. I miss her every day. But I don't miss him. I don't miss the way his eyes flickered toward the woods when no one was looking, or the way his voice sounded when he said, "It's all cleaned up now." 3 months ago, a news alert popped up on my phone, a name I hadn't spoken in years. Local trucker arrested for double homicide, human remains found on property. The article said the victims were women who'd vanished years apart, both last seen near mountain highways, both dismembered, their bones buried under concrete in his basement. The photos stopped me cold. His porch, his driveway, the sliding glass door of that guest room. And one detail that hollowed me out. Investigators said the padlocks on the interior doors were to contain odor during decomposition. I stared at the words until they blurred, trying to remember every second I spent in that house, every breath of that chemical rot. And all I could think was, what did I almost see? What was still behind those doors when I was standing on the other side? So, long-haul truck driver, I hope I never, ever see you again. I was 18 when it ended, but it started 2 years before, when I was 16, stupid and starved for attention. I wasn't the kind of girl boys noticed, bigger than most, quieter too. So, when he slid into my DMs on Snapchat, I thought the universe had finally handed me something good. His words poured over me like warm syrup, sweet, sticky, impossible to shake off. Compliments, pet names, midnight confessions about how he couldn't stop thinking about me. It felt intoxicating. I didn't see it for what it was. Love bombing. A predator scenting blood. After a week, he convinced me to drive to his house, an hour away. I had just gotten my license. It was stupid, but the hunger to be wanted can override reason. The drive out there was long and empty, winding through stretches of highway that looked the same no matter how far you went. His town was quiet, too quiet, the kind of place where every house seemed to be watching you with dead eyes. When I pulled into his driveway, something inside me whispered to go home, but I didn't. That was the first mistake, the first of many. He had this way of making you feel special and worthless at the same time. Little comments at first. Your friends don't get you. Your family doesn't appreciate you like I do. Subtle enough that I didn't notice the walls closing in until I was locked inside. My friends stopped calling. My family became strangers. All I had was him. And he loved that. He told me once, flat out, that he thought he was a sociopath. Said it was a joke, but his eyes didn't match his smile. Every time I caught him cheating, and there were so many times, I'd cry, threaten to leave, scream until my throat burned. He'd just stare at me with those flat, glassy eyes and say, "You're overreacting. You know you can't live without me." And the sick part? I believed him. Because by then, he gutted me so clean that I didn't know where he ended and I began. 18 months. That's how long I stayed. When he left for the Marines, I thought maybe it would save us. 13 weeks of letters, little lifelines scrawled in ink, keeping me chained to the fantasy that this was love. I drove across states for his graduation, stood in the crowd with tears in my eyes, thinking I'd done something noble, thinking pain meant devotion. When he came home, he moved into my house, said his parents didn't want him, said he had nowhere else to go. I believed him, and that's when the real cage snapped shut. He didn't just take up space. He filled every corner of it, watched me constantly, his gaze like cold fingers on the back of my neck. Sometimes I'd wake in the dark and find him sitting on the edge of the bed, staring. When my eyes opened, he'd smile, slow, thin, like he'd been watching for me to notice. I told myself that was love. That was the only way to survive it. When he left again for training, I could finally breathe. But paranoia is hard to kill. Every time my phone buzzed, I felt sick. And one morning, scrolling Instagram, I found it. A joke he posted about cheating on your girlfriend. Hidden from me, of course. Like he thought he was clever. That was the breaking point. I messaged the girls he followed on his burner account. Learned he was back on dating apps. Packed his shit and dumped it at his parents' house. April 2nd, the day I thought I got free. Was I ever wrong? Weeks passed. Quiet weeks. Healing weeks. And then one night, late April, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. 2 words. Package arrived. I stared at the screen, confused. Sent back a question mark. The reply came almost instantly. On your porch. It was 11 p.m. My heart thudded as I crept to the door. The night outside was black and swollen, the kind of dark that swallows sound. I opened the door and saw it. A black spiral notebook, sitting dead center on the mat like a waiting mouth. The porch light made the coil glint like teeth. I didn't pick it up right away. Something about it felt wrong, like it was breathing, like it was watching me. When I finally touched it, it was warm, too warm. Front to back, the notebook was filled with his handwriting. Page after page of rambling letters, apologies tangled in threats, love notes dripping poison. I couldn't read it that night. I shoved it in a drawer, locked the door, and slept on my parents' floor like a child, hiding from the monster under the bed. At 1:30 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Different number. The message read, "Can you honestly tell me you've enjoyed this past month?" That's when I knew he wasn't going to let me go. I eventually read the notebook. Curiosity killed me. And what I read, Jesus Christ. Lies stacked like corpses. He bragged about cheating on every girl he'd ever been with. Admitted to faking suicide attempts. Pretending to be hospitalized. Making me believe I'd broken him so I'd stay. He detailed things he'd done. Illegal things. But the worst part wasn't the crimes. It was the obsession. The way he wrote about me, like I wasn't a person, but a possession. Something he could take back whenever he wanted. Something that belonged to him, even in death. Then came the letters. One said he'd been watching me from a hill near my house. Described what I wore that day. Another said he'd still had the engagement ring and he'd return it when I was ready to come home. Like I'd ever belonged to him. I went to the police, filed reports, changed my number, changed my locks. But every time I think it's over, another envelope appears. Some from different states now, meaning he's moved, but that doesn't make me feel safe. If anything, it makes it worse. He could be anywhere, watching, waiting, planning. Every time my phone rings from an unknown number, I freeze. Every time I hear a car slow outside, my heart hammers. At night, I still check the shadows under my window. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I swear I hear the crunch of gravel, like footsteps on the driveway. He wrote something in that notebook, something that keeps me up at night. You can change your number, your codes, even your name, but you can't change the fact that you're mine. And the part that scares me most, I think he believes it. It's been 6 months since that last letter. 6 months of silence. 6 months of pretending I'm safe. Then tonight, I came home to find my front door ajar, just slightly, like a breath drawn and held. My stomach knotted as I stepped inside. Everything looked normal, at first. Then I saw it, sitting on my kitchen counter. The notebook, open to the last page, the ink fresh, the letters wet enough to smudge it when I touched them. The message read, "Told you I'd win you back. Stop looking behind you. Look up." And that's when I heard it, the soft creak of the floorboards above me. This is my first time I've written this down, until now. I've only told it to a few close friends over drinks, each time laughing nervously like it was some weird story to spook people with. But the truth is, I'm not laughing anymore, and I swear on everything I have left that what I'm about to tell you is, in fact, true. I used to live in this old building in a nice part of the city. Cobblestone streets, pretty old architecture, a park on one side, a kindergarten on the other. It looked safe, safer than most places, and that was good enough for me. But I wasn't living in one of those polished apartments you see on Instagram. I was ground floor, jammed into a shoebox unit with peeling paint and windows that barely locked. 5 other apartments in the building, all stacked above me like bones in a spine. The place was old enough that it needed constant patchwork. The owners, an older family from Chinatown, usually sent the grandfather around with a caulking gun, like he was the building's savior. But when duct tape and spit couldn't fix it, they called actual professionals, never bothering to tell us until someone was pounding at the door. At the time, I worked nights as a custodian at a government facility. The job was boring but easy, the kind where your brain goes quiet and the hours rot away. Still, the disrespect ate at me. People acted like you weren't a person, just a moving mop. Eventually, I quit, but not before this happened. I was on a schedule that made me a ghost, awake when everyone else was asleep when the world was moving. Most days, I didn't crawl out of bed until 11 a.m., and because I lived next to the front door, my landlady, illegally, I might add, would give strangers my phone number if they needed to get inside. I wasn't her employee, but that didn't matter to her. One night, she warned me someone might call. Nobody did. I figured they'd managed on their own. Then morning came. I woke up to the sound of grunting, heavy thuds, and the scrape of something metallic outside my bedroom window, the alleyway. I scrambled down from my loft bed, still groggy, heart jackhammering. The alley wasn't just for trash. It led to a back patio, and I kept some of my plants there, rare ones I babied for years. I love those plants, like beds. And now, someone was hauling rolls of tar paper and metal equipment down that cramped brick corridor. I rushed out in my skimpy pajamas, an old tank top and shorts, and nearly collided with three men squeezing past, shoulders brushing mine. Roofers. You could tell by the gear slung over their backs, by their clothes, the smell of asphalt clinging to them like a second skin. They froze when they saw me, their eyes dragged over me in a way that made me want to peel my skin off. I stammered an apology, clutching my ferns to my chest like a shield. "Just moving these inside," I said. My voice sounded too small. One of them smirked. Another muttered, "We'd never let anything happen." And then, that smile, like he'd said something much worse inside his head. I tried to laugh, awkward and hollow, and started handing plants through the bars of my air conditioner cage into my bedroom window. Like an idiot, I didn't think about what that told them. She lives here. Ground floor. This window. This room. By nightfall, they were gone. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, the phone jolted me awake. A local number. My brain fuzzed with sleep, but I answered, thinking it might be a delivery, a neighbor, or something ordinary. It wasn't. The voice on the other end was slurred, sticky with drink, accented in a way I couldn't place. "Frank there?" he asked. Or maybe it was Fan. Over and over he repeated it like a broken record. I told him he had the wrong number and hung up. But unease prickled at me long after the line went dead. I tried to fall back asleep. Then came the noise. First, faint movement in the alley. I brushed it off. Shared space, after all. Then a loud metallic bang from inside the building. I sat up, heart thudding. Silent. Too tired to deal with it. I collapsed back into the pillow. When I finally dragged myself out of bed at 10:30, the hallway felt wrong. Darker somehow. One of the sconces had been ripped apart, bulbs shattered, glass littering the floor like teeth. My skin crawled. I told myself it was maintenance. Then I went downstairs to check the laundry. The basement light didn't work. If you've never been in a basement like that, you won't understand. It wasn't just dark. It was alive with shadow. Long, narrow, packed with old junk and webbed with fat, venomous spiders. To do laundry there, you had to turn your back to that black throat of space. Every time I imagined something rushing out, grabbing me. I didn't go in, not without light. And that's when I saw it. The vacuum that always sat near the side door. Gone. Just gone. I went back to my apartment, uneasy, and started sorting laundry to distract myself. When I turned toward the window, my stomach turned to ice. Something was sitting on my seal. Something that hadn't been there before. A book. Dark cover. A revolver on it, angled like a threat, sticking out from its pages. A card. I picked it up with numb fingers. I can't remember the exact words, but it said something about wanting me to have the book. Signed with 2 words that made bile rise in my throat. Phone. Phone. The drunk man. The one who called me this morning. He'd been here, at my window, close enough to touch the glass. My hands shook so bad, I could barely text my neighbor upstairs, Vanessa. She hated the basement as much as I did. When she saw the picture, her response was instant. "Hold on." Seconds later, pounding on my door. She came in, pale and tight-lipped, like she'd seen death tap on her shoulder. "I went down earlier," she said, "before anyone else. The light was out. I called into the dark, thought maybe one of the girls was down there." Her voice cracked. A man answered. My stomach dropped. He said he was fixing the light. Her hand trembled at her sides. But his voice, deep, slurred. I couldn't understand him. I ran. I didn't stop running until I was back in my apartment. Together, we armed ourselves with flashlights and crept down. The broken bulb gleamed like an open wound. Powdered detergent streaked the steps, a breadcrumb trail leading from the machines into the hall. Something had been dragged, something heavy, and that vacuum pushed into the shadows like bait. The man was gone. Our only male neighbor shrugged it off. The landlady said we'd left the door unlocked. I begged her to check the number with the roofing crew. She refused, said they were good men, as if good men leave weapons on windowsills and stock basements in the dark. That was over a year ago. I moved out. But here's the part I don't tell most people. When I was packing the last of my things, I went to grab a final plant from the alley. My window was open. The air was cold. And there, just inside my room, sitting on my loft bed where I slept every night, was the book. Open. On the page was an old black and white photo. 6 men on a roof, grinning at the camera. One of them, the one in the middle, was staring too hard. His eyes weren't on the lens. They were looking down at something beneath him. At me. I don't remember dropping the plant. I don't remember running. But I do remember the smell on that page. Tar, sweat, asphalt, like the alley that day. And scrawled under the photo in jagged ink, "We never let anything happen." I was in my 20s back then. Young, reckless, and spiraling fast. Most of those years are a blur of booze and chemicals. But this night burns bright in my memory, carved into my brain like a brand. Maybe because I almost died. Maybe because something out there wanted me dead. I'd moved to Salt Lake City from Arizona, trying to piece together a life that didn't feel like a slow-motion collapse. Landed a job as a service tech, wiring equipment in gas stations along a lonely stretch of Utah highway. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept my hands busy and my thoughts quiet. At least until that night. I'd been working my way up the state, St. George to Salt Lake, hitting every backwater stop in between. That night, I finished a store late, maybe 10:30, closer to 11. The smart thing would have been to grab a room, crash for a few hours, but I told myself I'd pushed on to the next town. Less to do in the morning. The map app showed a shortcut, a thin gray line branching off the highway like a scar. I hesitated, staring at that dirt road through my windshield, engine idling like a nervous animal. I remember thinking how wrong it looked, how unnatural. No lights, no signs, no fences, just blackness swallowing everything beyond the reach of my high beams. And Like an idiot, I turned. The road was more like a cattle trail, winding through scrub and brush that leaned in close, like the land itself wanted to swallow me. My old 2008 work truck rattled like bones in a can. After 5, maybe even 7 minutes, the engine sputtered, coughed, then died. I sat there in silence, gripping the wheel, every nerve in my body screaming. I popped the hood, hoping for something obvious, something fixable. Nothing. And when I checked my phone, no service. Work phone, same thing. Just me and that black void pressing in from all sides. I thought about waiting until daylight, but the idea of sitting there in that suffocating dark felt worse than walking. So I grabbed my Milwaukee flashlight and the only thing that could pass for a weapon, a 10-inch pipe wrench, and stepped out into the cold desert night. I've spent plenty of nights in the Arizona desert. I thought I knew what darkness was. I didn't. This was a darkness that felt alive. The kind that presses against your skin and whispers to your instincts that you don't belong there. The dirt crunched under my boots as I followed the road on foot, hoping for a bar of signal. 5 minutes passed. 10. My breath smoked in the cold air, the beam of my flashlight jittering over twisted brush and skeletal trees. That's when I heard it. Laughter. Soft, childlike, muffled, like it came from behind me. My body locked up so hard it hurt. I spun, swinging the light through the darkness. Nothing. My boots sank into loose sand as I forced myself to keep moving, every step a war against panic. Then it came again, closer this time, louder, the laughter of something that shouldn't be there. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. I killed the flashlight and bolted off the trail, crashing through the brush and stones, lungs clawing for air. I'm not a small guy, 5'10", 230, but in that moment, I felt like prey. I crouched behind some jagged rock outcropping, my knee grinding into gravel, and stared out into the pale blue desert lit by the cold moon. That's when I saw them. 2 silhouettes running across the sand where I'd been standing seconds ago. Moving too fast, too fluid, their shapes warping against the moonlight. I gripped the wrench so tight my knuckles cracked. Then, God help me, I heard them talking. Not words I could understand, just a low, broken murmur, like language seen through a shattered mirror. I wanted to believe it was just some tweaked-out desert rat, junkies looking for trouble. But deep down, something in me knew better. This wasn't human. A cold wind curled through the brush, carrying something faint but sharp, a metallic tang, like blood on a knife. And then, a third set of footsteps, heavy, slow, coming from somewhere behind me. I stayed crouched, every muscle screaming. My mind was white noise. I thought about my family, about every stupid choice that led me here. I even typed out a goodbye text with shaking hands. I love you. I'm sorry for everything. Even though I knew it wouldn't send, just something to cling to. They were hunting me. I don't care what anyone says. They were hunting me. Finally, I thought of something. The oldest trick in the book. I picked up 2 fist-sized rocks, whispered a prayer to God I wasn't sure was listening, and hurled them into the distance. The sound cracked like a gunshot in the stillness. They took the bait. All three shadows broke toward the noise, their bodies jerking in ways that made my stomach twist. I waited until their shapes melted into the brush, then crawled, slow and silent, back toward the road. Every step was agony. Branches clawed at my legs, sand filled my boots, and behind me, I swear to God, I heard them breathing, sniffing, like they were savoring my scent. Then I saw the truck. Relief hit me so hard I almost sobbed. But that feeling died the second I saw the driver's side door hanging wide open. I know I shut it. I know I did. Something had been inside. I didn't think. I just ran, dove into the seat, slammed the door, and turned the key. The engine stuttered, whined, and then roared to life like some miracle. I slammed it into drive and floored it, spraying gravel and dirt into the black. And that's when I saw them. Hooded figures lining the sides of the road, crouched low, waiting. I couldn't see their faces, just shapes, long arms, too many joints, heads cocked at angles no human neck should bend. As I tore past, they scattered into the scrub, melting like shadows under a blood-red moon. I rolled down the window and hurled the wrench into the dark, a stupid primal scream tearing from my throat. And then there was nothing but the howl of the engine and the dust boiling in my headlights as I tore through the desert like the devil himself was behind me. When I hit town, the lights were like salvation burning on the horizon. I pulled into the first 7-Eleven I saw, stumbled inside, shaking so bad I could barely speak. The cashier stared at me like I was some kind of monster crawling out of the dark. The sheriff came. Big, burly old guy who looked at me like I was a drunk punk wasting his time. Asked if I'd been using, if I'd been hallucinating. I told him what happened. Told him about the laughter, the shapes, the door. He barely wrote a damn thing down. The mechanic came out to look at the truck the next morning. Burst hose, he said. Simple fix. He didn't charge me. Just gave me this look like maybe he believed me or maybe he knew better than to ask. I checked the truck bed later. Tools gone. Wire gone. They'd taken what they'd wanted. But if that was all they wanted, why hunt me through the desert? Why laugh like children in the dark? I quit that job not long after, moved to Florida. Sometimes I scroll through my old photos and see that one from the service call, the one that reminded me of all this. And every time I look at it, I wonder, who are they? And what would have happened if they'd caught me? Because I swear when I was running through that dead, silent desert, the thing I heard behind me wasn't just footsteps. It was breathing. So shadowy silhouettes in that desert, I hope I never, ever meet you again. I moved out a month ago, packed everything I owned into a truck and left that place behind without so much as a glance over my shoulder. People ask why I left so suddenly, why I seemed so desperate to get out of there. I lied. I told them it was for work, for convenience, anything but the truth. Because the truth is something I still can't shake. Something that lingers like a shadow behind my eyes every time I closed them. It started on a cold December night in that alleyway behind my old house. The house itself wasn't bad. Small, cozy, tucked between two parallel streets, connected by narrow alleys lined with tired old homes. The kind of place where the silence felt heavy, where the darkness didn't just fall but settled, thick and suffocating. Our front door faced the alley, and every night I'd park a half block away and cut through the black throat of that narrow passage to get home. There were no streetlights back there, just the soft spill of porch bulbs if someone remembered to turn them on. That night, I remember thinking how quiet everything seemed, how dead the air felt. The cold bit at my face as I climbed out of the car and started walking. My boots crunched against gravel, echoing too loudly. It felt like the whole alley was listening. When my house came into view, I felt a small relief. Warm light from the porch spilling onto the steps, a fragile beacon. I started up the 3 stairs when a voice called out behind me. I froze. Not a sound you expect in that kind of stillness. Not a friendly, hey, or hi, or something else. Low, urgent, echoing silently in the alley like a stone dropped into a well. I turned slowly, heart tightening. A figure stood just beyond the weak pool of light, swallowed mostly by the dark. Tall, broad, the shape of a man, but wrong somehow. Too still, too deliberate, in the way he stood there. Then he moved, stepping closer, and a street lamp glow caught on his hoodie. Blue. His voice came again, garbled, a language I couldn't catch at first, words tumbling thick and wet from his mouth. I told myself it was fine, probably someone who knew my roommates. We had friends coming and going all the time. I tried to sound casual when I said, hey, but it came out thin and brittle. I waited for recognition to spark, for something familiar in his face. Nothing. Just that expressionless look as he kept speaking, stepping closer like my silence was an invitation. The words sharpened as he neared. ¿Cómo te llamas? His voice dragged the syllables like weights. My stomach dropped. I didn't know him. I didn't know this man. The hair on my neck lifted as his shoes hit the first step. Too close. My instinct screamed, but my body locked up, just long enough for him to climb until we were almost touching. Barely 6 inches between us. The smell hit me then. Sour sweat, something rancid underneath, like meat left too long in the heat. He was swaying slightly, head cocked like a curious dog, whispering it again. ¿Cómo te llamas? I forced my voice out, jagged and sharp. Go! Back up, now! My hands shot out, pointing away. But he didn't move. Just that same slow sway, lips curling around the same question. I told him I had a knife. I reached into my pocket and showed him. Pathetic little box cutter, barely an inch long. I might as well have been holding a crayon. His eyes dropped to it, then rose again, unreadable. And then he smiled. God, that smile. Not wide, but teeth-baring. Just the faint, lazy curl of someone who knows something you don't. I started yelling louder, voice cracking, throat burning. Go! Get away! My words bounced usefully off the walls of the alley. He tilted his head, murmured, "No sé," as if he couldn't quite understand what I was saying. Then slid back into the same question, always the same question. "What's your name? What's your name?" Over and over, like a chant. That's when the realization slammed into me like ice water. If I opened that door and stepped inside, he would follow. He would be in my home. I bolted, shoved past him so hard his shoulder clipped mine. My feet hit the gravel, slipping, and I didn't dare look back. I could hear him, though, the drag of footsteps behind me, uneven, relentless. I cut around the side of the house, up the neighbor's driveway, toward the parallel street, lungs tearing. Townhomes loomed ahead like hollow faces in the dark. I took the steps two at a time and started pounding on doors, both of them, screaming until my throat bled. "Please, help me. I'm your neighbor. I live behind you, please. This man is after me." The silence on the other side of those doors was worse than death. My fists kept hammering, knuckles splitting against the wood. Behind me, I heard him murmur again, soft as breath, "Lo siento." I spun, and there he was. Shadows stretched long under the porch light. That same sway in his stance. Whispering apologies that didn't sound like apologies at all. Finally, a voice answered from above. I'm coming. I craned my neck, sobbing so hard I could barely see, and spotted a man leaning over the second-floor balcony. His eyes flicked from me to the figure behind me, and his face changed. His voice roared down like thunder. "What the fuck are you doing? Get out of here!" The man didn't run, didn't flinch, just stood there. That faint smile, lips twitching around. "Lo siento." Over and over. The door behind me swung open and I collapsed inside. The lock clicked and I felt the weight of it like a prayer. My bag hit the floor, my knees buckled, and I curled against the couch, sobbing while the neighbor called the cops. His wife appeared, eyes wide, voice soft, pressing a glass of water into my trembling hands, while their husky pressed against me, growling low and constant at the door. Then came the sound that still makes me sick when I remember it. A slow, deliberate thump. Then another, the sound of his body leaning against the wood, his voice seeping through the crack like smoke. "Lo siento, lo siento, lo siento." It didn't stop until the sirens came. They said they caught him around the corner, said another woman had called about him. But even when they told me he was in custody, I couldn't shake the thought. The way he looked at me, the way he smiled, the way he never ran, never panicked, like he knew something. I moved out a month later, packed everything and left that alley to rot in someone else's nightmares. But here's the part I can't say out loud. The thing that keeps me awake at night. Sometimes, I swear in the middle of the night, I hear it again. That soft swing whisper. "Como te llamas?" Curling through the dark. Like he never left. Like he's still looking for my name. So, creepy man, whispering "Como te llamas?" and "Lo siento." I hope I never meet you again. And that, dear listeners, brings a close to these true Let's Not Meet encounters. I'd like to take a moment and acknowledge the rest of the members of Back to Ashes. Thank you so much for your continued support. As I always like to say, without you, I don't have a voice, and there would not be a Back to Ashes. Thank you so much. If you are a new listener of the channel, I hope you've enjoyed. Please leave a like and a comment to let me know you've been here and like what you've heard. And if you'd like to become part of the Back to Ashes family, remember to hit that subscribe button and set your bell notification to all. That way you'll be reminded of every time I upload a video. If you are sleeping, I hope Slumberland is treating you comfortably. If you're awake, I hope you've enjoyed this collection. Until next time, please stay vigilant and stay safe out there. I'll be reading to you soon. Have yourselves a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening. Peace, love, and light to you all.